Olivia Baker stood before the tall mirror, examining her reflection with a nervous flutter in her chest. Her white lace gown, embroidered delicately with tiny pearls, shimmered gently beneath the soft morning sunlight filtering through the curtains. The floor-length veil rested softly over her dark hair, giving her the appearance of something out of a fairy tale. But her heart told a different story. Beneath the radiant exterior, she felt the tremble of uncertainty mixed with excitement, feelings natural to any bride, she assumed. A knock came softly at the door. Her best friend, Emma Carter, peeked in with a playful smile. "You ready, Liv? Everyone's waiting." Olivia took a deep breath and nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be," she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of joy and mild anxiety. Emma stepped closer, gently adjusting Olivia's veil. "You look beautiful. Nathan's going to cry like a baby when he sees you walking down that aisle." Olivia chuckled, feeling warmth ease some of her nerves. "You think so?" Emma nodded confidently. "Definitely. This is your day. Enjoy every second of it." Outside, the vibrant garden of the venue buzzed with gentle laughter and cheerful conversation. Sunlight cascaded through sprawling oak trees, casting dappled patterns onto rows of wooden chairs. Olivia felt her heartbeat quicken again as she stepped toward the entrance, gripping the soft bouquet of white roses and baby's breath tightly. As the melody of the wedding march began to play, Olivia's gaze settled at the end of the aisle. Nathan Bennett stood there, tall and handsome in his dark navy suit, a mixture of awe and disbelief evident in his eyes. He swallowed hard, clearly emotional, just as Emma had predicted. Each step Olivia took toward him steadied her nerves, reinforcing the reason she'd said yes when Nathan proposed beneath the glow of the Golden Gate Bridge 6 months earlier. She remembered that night vividly, the chill of the ocean breeze, the lights shimmering on the water, and Nathan's voice shaking slightly with earnestness and vulnerability as he asked her to be his wife. Finally reaching Nathan's side, Olivia felt her heart settle into a gentle rhythm as his warm hand enveloped hers. "You're perfect," he whispered, eyes sparkling with sincerity. The ceremony passed in a blissful blur. Heartfelt vows exchanged, their promises sealed with a gentle applause and cheers from family and friends. After the rings were placed gently onto each other's fingers, Olivia felt an indescribable sense of belonging, as though her entire life had led her to this singular moment. The reception that followed was lively, decorated elegantly with twinkling fairy lights, candles flickering gently on white linen tables, and soft music drifting through the cool evening air. Olivia, glowing with happiness, danced in Nathan's embrace, savoring every smile, every whispered congratulations, every laughter-filled moment. As the evening wore on, Margaret Bennett, Nathan's mother, approached Olivia with a broad, affectionate smile. Margaret was an elegant woman of 60, her hair neatly arranged into a silver bob, wearing a formal blue dress that matched the intensity of her gaze. "Olivia, dear," Margaret spoke sweetly, placing her soft, manicured hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Congratulations, my child. You looked simply radiant today." Olivia felt touched by her words, relieved by Margaret's obvious warmth. From the beginning, Olivia had worried about their relationship. Margaret, although seemingly pleasant, had a reputation within the family for being rather controlling. Yet tonight, seeing the sincerity on Margaret's face, Olivia felt perhaps her fears were exaggerated. "Thank you so much," Olivia responded warmly. "It means a lot." Margaret took Olivia's hand gently, guiding her aside slightly to talk privately. Her smile, though still warm, took on a slightly serious note. "Liv, dear, I was thinking, with the celebration winding down, you and Nathan might find yourselves overwhelmed with so many responsibilities, setting up your new home, managing finances, and all." Olivia's heart fluttered slightly, unsure of what Margaret was suggesting. "Yes, there's a lot to think about," Olivia agreed cautiously. Margaret nodded knowingly. "Exactly. That's why I was thinking it might help you if I kept the wedding gold safe for you." She squeezed Olivia's hand affectionately. Just until you're settled comfortably. It can be overwhelming, and the last thing you need is to worry about valuables during all the moving and organizing. Olivia paused briefly, feeling uncertain. It wasn't unusual in Nathan's family to follow traditional ways. Gold jewelry and coins gifted during the wedding were considerable and meaningful, more symbolic than financial, but still valuable enough to inspire caution. Olivia hesitated, but Margaret's gentle, motherly gaze made it difficult to voice any concerns. "Are you sure it won't be too much trouble, Margaret?" Olivia asked softly, careful not to show reluctance. Margaret shook her head firmly, her smile brightening. "No trouble at all, darling. Consider it my first gesture to support my beautiful new daughter-in-law. It'll be safe with me, I promise." Feeling touched by her mother-in-law's apparent generosity and care, Olivia finally nodded. "All right. Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate your kindness." Margaret's smile widened further, a look of satisfaction briefly flickering across her face before disappearing into warmth again. "Anything for family," she said reassuringly, hugging Olivia lightly. When Margaret walked away to mingle with the other guests, Olivia turned to see Nathan approaching. She reached for his hand instinctively, feeling comforted by his steady presence. "Everything all right?" Nathan asked gently, sensing her mild unease. "Yes," Olivia smiled reassuringly. "Your mother offered to keep our wedding gold safe until we get settled. She thought it might be easier for us." Nathan shrugged casually, obviously unconcerned. "Sure, Mom loves being involved. I'm glad you two are bonding." Olivia smiled warmly at her husband's relaxed attitude, feeling a rush of relief. Perhaps it was indeed just a loving gesture from a mother eager to help. After all, Margaret had always cared deeply about her family's welfare, and Olivia had no reason to doubt her sincerity now. As the evening drew to a close, the couple waved goodbye to guests beneath strings of softly glowing lights. Olivia rested her head on Nathan's shoulder, feeling blissfully content, unaware of the complicated paths their lives would soon take. She sighed happily, closing her eyes, imprinting this moment in her heart forever. Olivia knew marriage would have challenges, but tonight she allowed herself to revel only in joy, trusting fully in Nathan's love and Margaret's kindness, hopeful that their bond as a family would grow stronger with each passing day. Little did she know, the gold now carefully held in Margaret's possession would soon become more than just jewelry. It would turn into a catalyst, revealing truths, testing bonds, and shaping her future in ways she could never have imagined. The last of the guests disappeared into the cool, starry night, their laughter and cheerful goodbyes lingering softly in the evening air. Olivia took a deep, calming breath, savoring the quiet that had finally descended upon the garden venue. The glow of candles now flickered gently in the late breeze, their flames dancing like miniature spirits around her. Nathan's strong arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders, pulling her closer as they stood by the decorated archway, now entwined with soft white roses and emerald ivy. "It's finally just us," Nathan whispered into her hair, his voice a comforting caress against her ear. "Yes," Olivia said softly, leaning into him, breathing in his familiar scent, warm, comforting, with a faint hint of cologne. "It was such a beautiful day, wasn't it?" Nathan tilted her chin gently, gazing deeply into her eyes. "It was perfect. Liv, everything I dreamed about and more." He brushed his thumb across her cheek tenderly. "I can't believe you're my wife now." His earnestness made Olivia's heart flutter again, this time filled with sheer happiness. "I can't either," she confessed, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "It's like a dream. But I'm ready to wake up to you every morning from now on." Nathan chuckled softly, pressing a gentle kiss onto her forehead. "Good, because you're stuck with me now." Their quiet moment was interrupted by Margaret's soft footsteps approaching from the side entrance of the venue. She carried a velvet-lined wooden box, ornate yet elegant. She handed it gently to Olivia, smiling warmly. "Before I leave, Liv, I wanted you to have this." Olivia opened the box carefully, gasping softly at the beautifully engraved golden necklace inside. A delicate pendant, shaped like a small lily, glittered gently in the soft candlelight. "This belonged to my mother," Margaret explained softly, her voice trembling just a bit with nostalgia. "She gave it to me on my wedding day, and now I pass it to you. I hope it brings you luck and happiness, dear." Olivia was deeply moved, her earlier anxieties vanishing completely beneath the heartfelt sincerity in Margaret's gesture. "It's beautiful, Margaret. Thank you so much," she said warmly, gently embracing her mother-in-law. "I'll treasure it always." Margaret patted Olivia's back affectionately. "I trust you will. Welcome to the family, Olivia." Nathan smiled broadly at his mother, clearly touched. "Thanks, Mom. This means a lot to us." Margaret squeezed his arm affectionately. "Take good care of her, Nathan. Remember, a marriage needs nurturing, trust, and patience." Nathan nodded earnestly. "I will." With a final, gentle nod, Margaret turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows toward her waiting car. Olivia watched until Margaret was out of sight, feeling deeply grateful for this newfound family bond. She hadn't grown up in a very close-knit household. Her parents, divorced when she was a teenager, lived separate lives filled with their own concerns. Margaret's warmth felt like something she'd always longed for, filling a gap in her heart she hadn't realized existed. "Your mother really surprised me today," Olivia said thoughtfully, gently running her finger over the gold lily pendant. "I feel like she truly accepted me into the family." Nathan smiled proudly. "Mom has her moments, but deep down she always means well. You'll see." "I believe you," Olivia replied, slipping the necklace gently around her neck, feeling its reassuring weight settle against her skin. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Nathan nodded, his gaze softening even more. "Not nearly as beautiful as you." She laughed softly, lightly tapping his arm. "You always know just what to say." Taking her hand, Nathan gently led her toward their waiting limousine, ready to whisk them away for their honeymoon in Hawaii. Their future felt bright, full of endless possibilities and beautiful promises. During the ride to the hotel, Olivia leaned her head against Nathan's shoulder, watching the city lights flicker past through the tinted windows. Her mind drifted thoughtfully, picturing their future, dinners shared at a cozy kitchen table, quiet weekends cuddled up watching movies, perhaps eventually welcoming a child into their lives. It was all she'd ever dreamed of, a warm, loving home filled with laughter and gentle affection. Nathan, sensing her contemplative mood, kissed the top of her head gently. "Everything all right?" Olivia nodded, her smile peaceful. "More than all right. I was just imagining our future together." He squeezed her hand softly. "Tell me about it." She smiled dreamily. "A cozy little home, our own sanctuary. Maybe a yard with flowers. And someday, a family of our own." Nathan's eyes twinkled with affection. "Sounds perfect. We'll make it happen, Liv." Olivia nodded confidently, reassured by his steady presence and optimism. "We will." Their limousine slowed as it reached the elegant hotel entrance, the soft lights creating an inviting glow against the backdrop of night. As Nathan helped her from the car, Olivia took one final glance at the city behind them, feeling hopeful, protected, and deeply loved. Inside their suite, Olivia removed her veil carefully, setting it on the table next to the ornate box Margaret had given her. Nathan stepped behind her, gently unclasping the delicate chain, placing the necklace carefully back into its box. Olivia watched silently, her heart swelling with emotion, aware of the significance this heirloom carried. "Nathan," she spoke softly, turning to face him, her eyes serious yet gentle. "Promise me something." He met her gaze without hesitation. "Anything. Promise we'll always trust each other. Promise we'll always communicate honestly, even when things get tough," she whispered, vulnerability shining in her eyes. Nathan cupped her face gently, looking into her eyes with deep sincerity. "I promise, Liv. No matter what, we'll always talk things through." Relief flooded Olivia's heart. "And promise you'll always support me, especially if your family ever has disagreements." Nathan paused, but only briefly. He smiled reassuringly, holding her closer. Of course, Olivia. We're partners now, a team. I promise I'll always stand by you. Olivia breathed out a sigh of relief, feeling her fears fully dissipate beneath his confident promise. She had no way of knowing the challenges their marriage would eventually face or the depth of her own resilience she'd need to find. But at that moment, in Nathan's reassuring embrace, she believed nothing could break their bond. As they finally drifted to sleep that night, wrapped in each other's arms beneath the soft covers, Olivia felt utterly content, unaware of how deeply she would soon be tested. The promises made today would echo through the trials ahead, holding within them the power to both hurt and heal. The morning after their wedding, sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, painting the room in a warm, golden glow. Olivia stirred gently, feeling the unfamiliar weight of Nathan's arm wrapped protectively around her waist. Her heart fluttered pleasantly at the realization she was now married, officially beginning the journey she'd dreamed of her entire life. Careful not to wake Nathan, Olivia slipped quietly from bed and walked toward the balcony. She stepped outside, breathing in the crisp, salty air that carried the distant scent of the Pacific Ocean. Their honeymoon suite overlooked San Diego Bay, where sailboats drifted lazily across the sparkling water. Olivia leaned against the balcony railing, absorbing the quiet serenity, savoring this private moment before the rest of the world intruded again. She reflected on yesterday's events, particularly Margaret's surprising warmth. Olivia's fingers brushed gently over her collarbone, remembering the delicate lily pendant now safely packed away in her luggage. Margaret's kindness had profoundly touched her, easing the anxiety she'd held about fitting into Nathan's family. It had seemed genuine, a mother welcoming a daughter, a gesture filled with sincerity and grace. A soft noise behind her made Olivia turn. Nathan stood in the doorway, tousled hair, sleep still lingering in his eyes. But his expression softened as he took in the sight of her silhouetted by morning light. "Good morning, Mrs. Bennet," he murmured gently. Olivia felt her cheeks warm at the sound of her new name. "Good morning, Mr. Bennet," she replied, smiling warmly. "Did you sleep well?" He moved toward her, wrapping her gently in his embrace. "Best night's sleep of my life," he whispered, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. They stood quietly, watching the gentle rhythm of the waves below. Olivia felt peaceful, entirely at ease in Nathan's presence. The nagging doubts that had clouded her mind earlier melted away beneath the warmth of his affection. After breakfast, Nathan reached for his phone, scanning through congratulatory messages from friends and relatives. He chuckled softly, reading some of them aloud to Olivia. She laughed along, enjoying their relaxed conversation, until Nathan's expression shifted slightly. "What is it?" Olivia asked gently, noticing the sudden tension in his brow. "It's Mom," Nathan said, his tone careful. "She sent a message reminding us about the gold she took home for safekeeping. She said not to worry, she'll look after it." Olivia smiled softly, reassuring herself and Nathan. "That's thoughtful of her. It was probably valuable, and she seemed genuinely concerned about our moving stress." Nathan nodded slowly, glancing away momentarily, a faint uneasiness flickering across his face. "Yeah, Mom always means well, but she can be overly involved sometimes." Olivia hesitated, catching the subtle tension. "Should we be worried?" Nathan forced a reassuring smile, pulling her gently closer. "No, I trust Mom. She wouldn't do anything that wasn't in our best interest. Let's not worry about it right now. This is our honeymoon, we should be relaxing." Olivia nodded, relieved to hear Nathan's reassurance. She chose to trust his judgment, deciding not to let worry creep into their precious time together. The days that followed were filled with romantic strolls along golden beaches, exploring quaint cafes, and enjoying leisurely dinners by candlelight. Olivia felt herself falling more deeply in love with Nathan, savoring every shared laugh, every whispered secret, every tender touch. Throughout their honeymoon, Margaret continued to send occasional messages, short, friendly reminders of how things were going at home, often concluding with assurances that their wedding valuables were secure. Olivia appreciated her attentiveness, even if it sometimes felt excessive. She reminded herself again that Margaret's intentions were good, choosing to view her mother-in-law's frequent check-ins as a sign of genuine care. On their final evening in Hawaii, Olivia sat curled up beside Nathan on the balcony, wrapped comfortably in a soft blanket. The sky blazed with vivid streaks of purple and gold as the sun slowly dipped beneath the horizon. "I wish we could stay here forever," Olivia said softly, her voice wistful. Nathan squeezed her hand reassuringly. "I know. But just imagine, we're going home to start our real lives together. Isn't that exciting?" Olivia smiled warmly, imagining their future, a cozy home, shared routines, the quiet intimacy of everyday life. "It is. I just hope we keep this feeling with us always." Nathan gently cupped her cheek, gazing deeply into her eyes. "We will. No matter what happens, remember we're in this together." His words, spoken so sincerely, reassured her deeply. She rested her head gently against his shoulder, watching twilight descend upon the ocean, waves whispering gently against the shore below. Returning home, Olivia felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as they stepped back into the reality of everyday life. Margaret greeted them warmly at the airport, wrapping Olivia in a tight hug. "Welcome home, dear. Did you two enjoy yourselves?" "It was wonderful, thank you," Olivia said genuinely, feeling comforted by Margaret's continued warmth. Margaret smiled approvingly, taking Olivia's hand affectionately. "Good. Now remember, I still have your valuables safe. Once you two are fully settled, we'll arrange everything properly." Olivia nodded politely, relieved to have one less thing to worry about during their busy transition period. She didn't realize yet how significantly this casual arrangement would influence her future happiness. As the newlyweds settled into Nathan's childhood home temporarily while they searched for their own house, Olivia gradually became aware of subtle changes. Margaret, previously gentle and accommodating, began voicing stronger opinions, subtly questioning Olivia's decisions regarding their plans for the future. Nathan, caught between his mother and his new wife, found himself often silent, unsure how to mediate. Yet Olivia chose patience, reminding herself constantly of the promises she and Nathan had made to trust, support, and communicate openly. After all, their marriage was still fresh, their bonds untested. One evening, as Olivia unpacked boxes of their belongings, she found Margaret in the hallway, carefully examining their wedding photos hung neatly on the wall. Margaret turned, smiling softly. "You both look so happy. Always remember these moments, Olivia. Happiness is fleeting unless you protect it." Olivia nodded slowly, feeling the weight behind Margaret's words, though she didn't fully grasp their significance yet. "We'll do our best," she replied gently, still hopeful that Margaret's involvement stemmed purely from maternal concern. Margaret nodded thoughtfully, a distant look briefly clouding her eyes. "I believe you will," she said quietly. But sometimes, even the strongest marriages face challenges they never see coming. As Margaret walked away, Olivia stood alone in the quiet hallway, contemplating her words. She felt a flicker of unease, a shadowy uncertainty brushing against the edges of her happiness. Yet she pushed it aside firmly, trusting deeply in her marriage, her love for Nathan, and the promises they had made on that perfect day, unaware that the deepest challenges were quietly gathering strength in the shadows ahead. Days turned into weeks as Olivia and Nathan adjusted to their temporary living arrangement in the Bennett family home. Despite Margaret's occasional intrusive nature, Olivia initially saw it as an act of maternal protectiveness. After all, Margaret had been gracious enough to offer them space while they navigated their search for the perfect home. Yet, subtle tensions began to build. Olivia couldn't pinpoint exactly when Margaret's motherly concern evolved into something different, something more controlling. She noticed Margaret would casually question Olivia's small decisions, the way she prepared meals, how often she called her parents, even the clothing she wore when leaving for work. Initially, Olivia brushed these off as mere quirks, determined not to overthink things. After all, every family had its idiosyncrasies, and adjusting to a new family dynamic took time. Nathan, busy with his demanding career as a software engineer, often missed these small exchanges entirely, returning home too exhausted to notice the subtle friction building between the two most important women in his life. One evening, Olivia was sorting laundry when she overheard Margaret's hushed conversation with Robert in the adjoining room. Margaret's voice, usually gentle and composed, sounded strained. "I'm just worried." "Robert," Margaret whispered urgently. "Olivia is sweet, but she seems quite frivolous with spending. What if they waste all their money before even buying a house?" Robert's calm voice replied patiently, "Margaret, they're adults. We need to trust their judgment. Nathan is responsible. Olivia seems capable too." Margaret sighed deeply, a sound laced with worry and frustration. "But Robert, Nathan's too soft-hearted. He lets Olivia make too many decisions without thinking them through. I'm just trying to protect them." Olivia's heart sank, embarrassment and confusion swirling inside her chest. Had she genuinely appeared careless with money? She'd always prided herself on being careful and responsible. She wanted desperately to confront Margaret, clarify the misunderstanding, but the thought of causing tension held her back. Instead, Olivia quietly returned to folding laundry, feeling unease churn within her. The next morning, Margaret approached Olivia at the breakfast table, her tone unusually cautious. "Olivia, dear, I hope you don't misunderstand my intentions. I've noticed some spending habits that concern me, little indulgences here and there." Olivia felt her cheeks warm defensively. "Margaret, I promise we've been careful. Nathan and I have a clear budget for everything." Margaret smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I understand, darling. Still, perhaps you'd let me handle the wedding gold a bit longer, just until you both truly settle down. It would ease my mind tremendously." Olivia hesitated, sensing the delicate tension beneath Margaret's polite request. "Of course, if you think that's best," she conceded quietly, suppressing her reluctance. She reminded herself of Nathan's trust in his mother, deciding it wasn't worth causing unnecessary conflict over a temporary arrangement. That evening, Olivia confided quietly to Nathan in their bedroom, her voice gentle yet concerned. "Do you think your mother doubts my ability to manage finances? I overheard her saying something to your father." Nathan sighed softly, reaching out to hold her hand reassuringly. "Mom has always been cautious with money, Liv. She means well, I promise. Try not to let it bother you." Though his words aimed to comfort, Olivia sensed Nathan's slight unease. She wanted to press further, but held back, mindful not to strain their marriage so soon. Instead, she forced herself to smile and nodded, choosing to trust Nathan's assurances. As weeks went by, Olivia buried herself in work, determined to build their savings and find their own home quickly. Her job as a marketing manager at a fashion company kept her busy and fulfilled. Yet lingering doubts about Margaret's attitude continued to shadow her mind. One weekend afternoon, Olivia returned home early from work, finding Margaret sitting at the kitchen table, meticulously reviewing a stack of receipts and documents. Olivia paused cautiously. "Margaret? Is everything all right?" Margaret glanced up, surprise briefly crossing her face before settling into a polite smile. "Oh yes, dear. Just double-checking household expenses." Olivia stepped closer, recognizing receipts from some recent personal purchases, small things she'd treated herself to, a new handbag, a few books, makeup essentials. Her stomach twisted uncomfortably. "Those are mine," she murmured softly. Margaret raised an eyebrow gently. "Precisely, dear. I was curious about your priorities. Every penny counts, especially when you're starting out. Nathan can be overly lenient. It's important someone keeps track." Olivia swallowed hard, struggling to keep her composure. "Margaret, I appreciate your concern, but Nathan and I have discussed this. We know exactly what we're doing." Margaret gave her a faintly patronizing smile. "I'm sure you believe that, Olivia. But sometimes young couples underestimate life's challenges. You'll see, I'm just looking out for both of you." Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, Olivia quietly excused herself, retreating upstairs to their bedroom. Her heart raced, frustration mixing with confusion. Margaret's behavior was crossing lines, making Olivia feel like an irresponsible child rather than an equal member of the family. Later that night, unable to sleep, Olivia gazed out the bedroom window at the quiet neighborhood. She felt a pang of loneliness, longing for the simple comfort of a home truly theirs, away from scrutiny and subtle criticism. She wondered briefly whether she'd made a mistake in allowing Margaret to control aspects of their lives so closely, especially something as symbolic as their wedding valuables. But then Nathan stirred beside her, his sleepy gaze meeting hers. "Liv can't sleep." She forced a small smile. "Just restless." He wrapped his arm gently around her waist, pulling her close. "Whatever's on your mind, you know you can tell me." Olivia hesitated, the words caught in her throat. But something stopped her fear that voicing her discomfort might create tension Nathan wouldn't be ready to handle. Instead, she kissed him softly. "I'm fine. Just thinking about finding our perfect home." Nathan nodded sleepily, pulling her closer. "We'll find it soon, I promise. Everything's going to be okay." His reassurance warmed her briefly. Yet deep inside, Olivia's unease lingered. She knew eventually she'd have to confront Margaret directly if the controlling behavior continued. But for now, she chose peace, hoping that once they moved into their own place, these tensions would fade. She drifted into restless sleep, unaware that this quiet compromise marked the first subtle crack in the foundation of trust she'd so carefully built. The golden promise Margaret held onto wasn't merely jewelry, it was becoming a silent measure of power and control. A ticking time bomb awaiting the right moment to ignite a storm Olivia never saw coming. In the weeks following the tense exchange over the receipts, Olivia found herself increasingly cautious around Margaret, choosing her words carefully and monitoring every step she took in the household. The once cozy, welcoming atmosphere gradually shifted into something that felt colder, tinged with unspoken expectations and subtle judgment. Despite Olivia's growing discomfort, Nathan appeared oblivious, or perhaps deliberately blind, to the shifting dynamic between his mother and his wife. Olivia, desperate to preserve peace, convinced herself repeatedly that this tension was merely temporary. Soon, she believed, they'd have their own space, a haven where their new marriage could flourish without interference. Yet Margaret's grip tightened subtly with each passing day. Simple interactions became complicated. Margaret casually rearranged Olivia's kitchen supplies, explaining with a polite smile that her way was more efficient. Small items Olivia had carefully chosen for their future home disappeared, only to be replaced by Margaret's own selections, often presented as thoughtful gifts, but feeling increasingly intrusive. One quiet afternoon, Olivia sat alone on the porch, sipping tea and skimming through house listings online. Margaret appeared suddenly at her side, peering over her shoulder, eyebrows knitting in mild disapproval. "You two aren't seriously considering those neighborhoods, are you?" Margaret questioned lightly, her tone deceptively casual. Olivia hesitated, feeling defensive yet eager to avoid conflict. "We're just exploring all options." Margaret clicked her tongue softly. "You need to consider future children, Olivia. Schools, safety, everything matters. Nathan deserves a stable environment." Olivia bit back a retort, frustrated by Margaret's implicit criticism. "Of course, Nathan and I discussed these things carefully." Margaret sighed, gently patting Olivia's shoulder, her touch both comforting and controlling. "Well, you'll see what I mean soon enough." When Nathan returned home from work that evening, Olivia attempted to broach the subject gently. "Nathan, do you think your mother is too involved in our decisions? Especially about the house?" Nathan glanced at her, visibly uncomfortable. "Mom just wants what's best, Liv. She's always been protective. Try not to take it personally." Olivia's heart sank slightly. "But doesn't it bother you at all? We're adults. We need space to make our own choices." Nathan hesitated, sighing. "I understand, but Mom doesn't mean any harm." Can we please avoid turning this into an issue right now? Reluctantly, Olivia nodded, swallowing her disappointment. She understood Nathan's desire for peace, yet she couldn't suppress the hurt at his continued reluctance to acknowledge the issue openly. Days turned into weeks, and the invisible wall between Olivia and Margaret grew higher. Yet Olivia clung to hope, convinced a fresh start in their own home would eventually repair any tension. Then, on a bright Saturday afternoon, Margaret gathered the family in the living room, holding a carefully wrapped parcel. Olivia felt curiosity mixed with apprehension as Margaret approached her with an affectionate smile. "I have a surprise," Margaret announced, handing the package to Olivia. "Open it, dear." Olivia unwrapped the paper carefully, revealing a beautifully framed photo from their wedding. In it, Olivia was laughing joyfully, Nathan's arm draped lovingly around her. Olivia felt genuinely touched, emotions softening her defenses. "It's beautiful," Olivia murmured warmly, gratitude filling her heart. "Thank you, Margaret." Margaret's smile broadened. "It's my way of reminding you both of your promises. Marriage isn't always easy, but family helps guide us." Olivia nodded appreciatively, choosing to embrace the thoughtful gesture positively. Perhaps Margaret truly meant well, despite her controlling tendencies. Nathan smiled happily at his mother's gift, seemingly relieved by the gesture's perceived peace offering. Yet that very evening, Olivia's newfound hope was quietly shattered. Passing the study late at night, she overheard Margaret speaking quietly on the phone, her voice firm and assertive. Yes, of course." Margaret spoke softly. "Olivia still believes everything is safe. But I had to use it, it was necessary. What choice did I have?" Olivia froze, her pulse quickening with panic. Margaret's next words twisted deeper. "If she finds out the gold's gone, Nathan won't stand by quietly. I need more time." Feeling a wave of nausea, Olivia retreated quickly down the hall, her mind spinning frantically. She'd trusted Margaret implicitly, handing over the gold wedding valuables without hesitation, believing in Margaret's assurance. Now, doubts flooded her mind, her stomach churning painfully. She debated confronting Margaret immediately but hesitated. Nathan trusted his mother deeply, and Olivia feared accusations of misunderstanding or overreaction. She was trapped, uncertain of whom she could confide in, feeling utterly alone. When she finally climbed into bed beside Nathan, her heart thumped painfully. She stared at the ceiling, emotions warring within, betrayal, fear, uncertainty, all swirling chaotically. "Nathan," she whispered tentatively, her voice trembling slightly. Nathan replied sleepily, turning toward her. She hesitated, the words caught painfully in her throat. "Do you trust your mother completely?" Nathan opened his eyes fully, sensing the weight behind her question. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" Olivia hesitated again, aware that revealing what she'd overheard would ignite tensions she wasn't ready for. "No reason. Just making sure," she whispered weakly. Nathan held her closer, falling back asleep quickly. Olivia lay awake, trapped between her growing doubts and loyalty to her husband. She was alone in this uncertainty, unsure of her next move. In the days following, Olivia watched Margaret carefully, noticing subtle signs she'd previously overlooked: Margaret's guarded conversations, unexplained absences, and sudden secretive meetings with unfamiliar visitors. Olivia's unease deepened. Yet Olivia held back, hoping desperately she'd misinterpreted Margaret's cryptic words. She clung to the fragile promise made on their wedding day, unwilling yet to let suspicion shatter her idealistic vision of family unity. But as weeks turned into months, Olivia realized this uneasy peace couldn't last. The wedding gold, symbolic of trust and security, had silently transformed into something ominous, a secret Margaret guarded carefully, and Olivia feared to confront. The promise made under the sunlit wedding archway was becoming a shadow, threatening everything Olivia cherished. She felt a storm brewing slowly, quietly, yet inevitably building toward an explosion that would test their promises, their trust, and their family bonds in ways Olivia could scarcely imagine. Yet, even in uncertainty. Olivia found a quiet resolve within herself. She knew that soon she would need the courage to face this truth directly, regardless of the consequences. The golden promise Margaret held had ceased being merely jewelry. It had become a symbol of Olivia's strength, resilience, and, ultimately, her path toward reclaiming control of her own life. It had been nearly 3 months since the wedding, and Olivia had become a master at masking discomfort. Each morning, she woke before Nathan, tiptoeing around the house to avoid awkward encounters with Margaret. She smiled politely at breakfast, laughed at stories she didn't find amusing, and nodded in agreement even when her instincts screamed otherwise. It was exhausting. Margaret, for her part, carried herself as though nothing had changed. Her voice was always gentle, her actions carefully measured. But Olivia had learned to read between the lines how the older woman's suggestions were, in truth, directives, and how her compliments often veiled criticism. What Olivia couldn't ignore, though, was the lingering weight of Margaret's phone call. Those few overheard words played on a loop in her mind every time she looked at the jewelry box that once held her wedding gold. It had been days since she'd last asked Margaret about it, her question deflected with ease, hidden behind sweet smiles and soft assurances. One evening, after dinner, Olivia decided she couldn't wait any longer. Margaret was in the living room, watching a period drama with a glass of red wine. The atmosphere was deceptively calm. "Margaret," Olivia began, carefully modulating her tone. "I wanted to ask you about the wedding gold again. I know you said you'd keep it safe for us, but I think we'd like to have it back now. We're getting closer to putting down a deposit on a house." Margaret didn't look away from the television. "Oh? That soon?" "Yes," Olivia replied. "We've found a few promising places, and I think it's time we manage everything ourselves." Margaret took a slow sip of wine, her fingers elegantly wrapped around the glass stem. "Olivia, dear, you don't need to rush into anything. Let the dust settle. Besides, I thought we agreed I'd hold on to it until things were stable." Olivia's voice remained steady. "We did, but that was temporary. And we're stable now. It's time we have our wedding assets in our own hands." Margaret finally turned to look at her, eyes cool but composed. "Is this about trust?" Olivia swallowed hard. "It's about responsibility. We're married now. It's important to us." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. There was a pause, a silence that stretched too long. Then, Margaret sighed and set her wine down. "All right. I'll go through the safe tomorrow and get everything together." "Thank you," Olivia said, forcing a smile. "I appreciate it." But the next day passed. Then another. And another. Each time Olivia brought it up, Margaret had a new excuse. She wasn't feeling well. She had errands to run. The safe was stuck. The pattern was unmistakable. And Olivia's unease evolved into something sharper, suspicion. Finally, one Saturday morning, Olivia confronted Nathan. They were sitting on the patio, sunlight slanting across the wooden deck, the hum of distant traffic filling the silence between them. Olivia stirred her coffee absently before speaking. "Nathan," she said, carefully, "I need to ask you something. And I need you to really listen." He turned toward her, his expression already wary. "Okay. It's about your mom," she said gently. "I think she's lying about the wedding gold." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I overheard her weeks ago," Olivia continued. "She was on the phone. She said she used it, that she needed more time to replace it. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but every time I've asked her since, she delays or changes the subject." Nathan leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "That doesn't sound like Mom. She's careful, almost obsessively so, with anything valuable." "I know how it sounds," Olivia said. "But I can't ignore it anymore. We gave her something that was ours. That meant something to me. And now she won't even be honest." Nathan exhaled slowly, as if the air had been knocked out of him. "Are you sure you heard her right?" "I'm sure," Olivia replied, her voice soft but firm. "I haven't said anything for weeks because I didn't want to create conflict. But this isn't just about the gold, Nathan. It's about trust." He looked away, toward the garden, his jaw clenched. She probably meant she used a little, temporarily. Maybe for the house or something for Dad. Olivia stared at him. That's not the point. She never asked. She never told us. She took what wasn't hers to use. There was a long silence. I'll talk to her, Nathan said finally, his voice low. Tonight. But night came and went. Olivia waited, watching Nathan fidget, avoid. Change the subject. When she asked if he'd spoken to Margaret, he hesitated, then muttered, not yet. I need to find the right moment. The right moment never came. Instead, the days grew heavier. Weighed down by silence and tension. Margaret carried on as if nothing had happened. Nathan stayed late at work more often. And Olivia began to feel like a ghost in her own marriage. One night, after an especially quiet dinner, Olivia stood in the kitchen alone, staring at the ring on her finger. The gold band, once a symbol of unity, now felt like a shackle. She took it off slowly, setting it on the counter with a hollow clink. That night, she packed a small bag and left without saying goodbye. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. She just walked out because staying meant slowly erasing herself. And as the front door clicked shut behind her, Olivia realized, sometimes, the most painful betrayal isn't a lie or a theft. Sometimes, it's silence. And silence was all she'd been given. Olivia stepped into the night air, the weight of her small suitcase dragging gently behind her. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. Her footsteps on the driveway echoed louder than they should have, like the universe itself had turned its ear toward her, listening to every sound of this quiet rebellion. She didn't cry. She thought she might. But there was only stillness, numb and hollow, like someone had pulled her heart out and replaced it with fog. Her friend Emma's apartment wasn't far. Olivia had texted her just an hour earlier. Do you have space for a few nights? Emma had replied within seconds. Always. Come over. Doors unlocked. Olivia reached the front steps of Emma's building just before 10 p.m. As promised, the door was open. She stepped inside and was met by the comforting smell of lavender and old books. Emma appeared from the hallway, wearing pajama pants and a look of quiet concern. Liv, she said softly, arms already outstretched. Olivia walked straight into them. For the first time in weeks, she let herself be held. They didn't speak for a long time. Olivia sat curled up on the couch, legs tucked under her, as Emma poured her a cup of chamomile tea and handed her a blanket. Finally, Emma broke the silence. So, are you leaving for good? I don't know, Olivia whispered. I left for now. I couldn't do it anymore. Emma nodded slowly. Did something happen? Olivia stared at the cup in her hands. The steam had begun to fade, and the warmth was already seeping into her skin. You remember how I told you Margaret was holding on to our wedding gold? Yeah. She used it. Without asking. I overheard her saying so. And she's been lying about it ever since. Emma's expression darkened. What? Are you serious? I confronted Nathan, Olivia said. Her voice heavy. But he didn't do anything. He just avoided it. Like he always does when it's about her. I waited. I gave him time. And still, nothing. Emma sat back, crossing her arms. That's not okay, Liv. You deserve better than that. Olivia gave a tired laugh. I kept telling myself it would change once we moved out. That things would be better when it was just the two of us. But the truth is, he chose silence. Again and again. And I chose to keep waiting. She looked up, her voice growing steadier. I've been shrinking myself for months to avoid conflict. Smiling when I wanted to scream. And now I don't even recognize myself. Emma reached over, gently squeezing her hand. You're doing the bravest thing you can do right now. You're protecting your peace. I don't feel brave, Olivia murmured. You will, Emma said softly. You just need space to remember who you are. The next morning, Olivia woke in Emma's guest room to a soft knock on the door. Sunlight streamed through gauzy curtains, casting a golden hue across the white duvet. Emma poked her head in. I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, and non-judgment. Olivia smiled faintly. You're the best. She joined Emma at the kitchen table and felt, for the first time in weeks, the luxury of silence not charged with tension. There were no passive-aggressive remarks, no expectations, just peace, and it felt sacred. After breakfast, Olivia pulled out her laptop and opened the spreadsheet she and Nathan had been using to track their house hunt. She stared at it for a long time, then slowly, deliberately, deleted her name from the document. Next, she opened a new spreadsheet and began again. From scratch. On her own. The thought of buying a home by herself had once felt ludicrous. Now, it felt like the only thing she could control. She spent the rest of the day applying for listings, researching mortgage estimates, and updating her resume, just in case. Her marketing job had been stable, but she couldn't afford to take anything for granted anymore. Not money. Not people. Not promises. Meanwhile, back at the Bennett home, Nathan came home to find Olivia's suitcase missing, her closet half empty, and her ring resting quietly on the kitchen counter. His heart stopped for a moment. "Mom," he called out. Margaret emerged from the hallway, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Yes." "Where's Olivia?" Margaret didn't flinch. "She left last night." "I assume she told you." Nathan felt a knot form in his chest. "No, she didn't." He picked up the ring, staring at it. "What happened?" Margaret sat at the table, calm and composed. "She's been emotional. Sensitive. I suppose all of this overwhelmed her." Nathan narrowed his eyes. "Did you talk to her about the gold?" Margaret didn't answer right away. "She asked about it, yes." "And?" His voice grew sharp. Margaret's lips thinned. "I may have used some of it. For a medical bill. For your father. It wasn't meant to be permanent." "You didn't tell us," Nathan said coldly. "I didn't think I needed to." Margaret said, "I raised you. I've protected you your whole life. I didn't think I needed permission to make a decision that benefited the family." Nathan shook his head, anger rising in his throat. "That wasn't yours to take." "I would have replaced it," Margaret said, but her voice had lost its edge. "You don't get to decide what Olivia sacrifices." There was a long silence between them. "I'm going to find her," Nathan said finally. "And I'm going to tell her the truth." Margaret sat still, her expression unreadable. "And what if she doesn't forgive you?" Nathan looked down at the ring in his hand. "Then she deserves someone who would have stood up for her when it mattered." He turned and walked out the door, unaware that this moment, the moment he finally chose Olivia over silence, might have come too late. Back in Emma's apartment, Olivia sat at the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of fire and ash. Her phone buzzed. "Nathan, I'm sorry. I know I should have said something sooner. Can we talk?" Olivia stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, her heart pounding. She didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, she let the moment settle around her, the quiet, the stillness, the aching possibility of a different future. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine what healing could look like on her terms. Olivia sat still for a long time, the phone in her lap, Nathan's message glowing faintly on the screen. "Can we talk?" She read it again. And again. 3 months ago, those words from him would have made her run home, heart wide open, ready to forgive, ready to hope again. But now, she felt a strange distance, like those words were spoken across a foggy ocean. Emma stepped into the room quietly, holding 2 mugs of peppermint tea. She handed one to Olivia and didn't ask anything. She simply sat beside her, giving her the space to breathe, to think. Finally, Olivia whispered, "He texted." Emma glanced at the screen, then looked back at Olivia. "And what do you want to do?" "I don't know," Olivia replied honestly. "I don't want to be angry forever. But I also don't want to go back to pretending." "You don't have to decide right now," Emma said gently. "You can sit in the in-between for as long as you need." Olivia nodded, sipping the tea. The steam rose softly, curling like ghostly threads into the air. She closed her eyes and let herself feel the swirl of emotions, grief, guilt, sorrow, and something else she hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Later that evening, when she was alone, She opened a blank page on her journal app and began to write, not a reply to Nathan, but a letter to herself. Dear Olivia, you tried. You gave love, trust, and patience. You sacrificed comfort, swallowed your pride, and waited for someone to see you really see you. And when no one did, you chose yourself. That was not weakness. That was strength. Whatever comes next, healing, forgiveness, love, or letting go, remember this. You are not leaving because you are selfish. You are walking away because you deserve peace. The next morning, Olivia sent Nathan a short message. I'll meet you at 5. The park near the old bookstore. His reply came within seconds. I'll be there. At 4:58 p.m., Olivia arrived at the park, heart beating hard against her ribs. The sky above was overcast, heavy clouds dimming the late afternoon light. She spotted Nathan standing under a tall sycamore tree, nervously rubbing his hands together. He looked thinner, paler. His eyes met hers the moment she stepped onto the path. Hey, he said softly. Hey. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, Nathan began, voice cracking. I should have spoken up. I should have stood by you. I was scared of disappointing her, and I ended up disappointing you instead. Olivia nodded, arms folded over her chest. You did. He swallowed hard. She told me the truth. About the gold. That she used it. I confronted her. She tried to justify it, but there's no excuse. No, Olivia said firmly. There isn't. Nathan's voice grew desperate. I didn't know how to fix it, Liv. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would pass. But I see now that silence was the choice. And it was the wrong one. She looked at him, her gaze steady. You didn't just stay silent about the gold, Nathan. You stayed silent about everything. Every time she overstepped, every time I felt small in that house. Every time I needed you to choose me, you disappeared. Nathan's eyes glistened. I know. And I'm sorry. I can't go back and change what I did. But I want to be better. I want to be someone you can trust again. Olivia looked away for a long moment. The park was quiet except for the rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of a child on a swing. Then she turned back to him. I believe you want to be better. But I don't know if I can keep paying the price while you figure out how. He stepped closer, but didn't touch her. What do you need? I need time, Olivia said simply. And space. I need to remember what it feels like to make decisions without waiting for someone to approve them. I need to feel like my voice matters. Nathan nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling into his chest. I'll give you that. Whatever it takes. She nodded once, quietly. He pulled something from his pocket, a small, velvet pouch. I went through my savings. Sold my gaming setup, canceled our trip to Colorado, and I managed to buy back some of what she used. He handed it to her. It's not everything, but it's a start. Olivia took the pouch in her hand, felt the faint clink of jewelry inside, and swallowed hard. Thank you, she whispered. They stood in silence again. Finally, she said. This doesn't mean I'm coming back. I know, Nathan replied, his voice low. But maybe it means the door isn't completely closed. She gave a half smile, small and tired. Maybe. Then she turned and walked away, the velvet pouch tucked tightly in her hand. Not as a symbol of forgiveness. Not yet. But as proof that even after betrayal, there could still be truth. There could still be beginnings. Even in endings. Olivia didn't go home that night. She didn't unpack the velvet pouch Nathan had handed her either. It sat untouched on Emma's dresser, quietly heavy with everything it represented: regret, restitution, and something still too fragile to name. That evening, Olivia cooked dinner with Emma, spaghetti and a simple salad, and for the first time in a long while, she laughed. Not a polite chuckle, not a forced smile for appearances, but a real laugh, clumsy, loud, and healing. It startled her, the way her lungs expanded as if they were remembering how to breathe joy again. But that night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the ache returned. A quiet pulse deep in her chest. Not for Nathan, exactly. Not even for the version of their marriage she once believed in. But for all the silent hopes that now felt bruised and distant. She reached for her phone and opened the Photos app. Their wedding album stared back at her, Margaret pinning the lily pendant around her neck. Nathan gazing at her like she was the center of the universe. She scrolled faster, until she reached the last image, Olivia, smiling alone, veil trailing in the wind. She closed the app. The next morning, Olivia woke to a call from Robert Bennett, Nathan's father. She hesitated before answering. Robert rarely called her directly. "Hi, Robert," she said cautiously. "Olivia," he replied, his voice steady but serious. "I wanted to speak with you. Just us." She sat up in bed. "Okay." "Margaret's not well," he said after a pause. "I didn't want to burden you, but I think you should know. She's been having dizzy spells. Shortness of breath. She fainted yesterday in the kitchen." Olivia's heart skipped. "Is she in the hospital?" "She refused to go," Robert said. "You know how stubborn she is. But the doctor came by. It's her heart. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but she needs care. And someone she'll listen to." Olivia gripped the phone tighter. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Robert said gently, "you're the only one she ever really listened to, even when she pretended not to." There was a long silence. "She won't ask for help," Robert continued. "But she needs it. And I think she needs you." Olivia ended the call with trembling hands. That afternoon, Olivia stood once again in front of the Bennett house. The same steps she had descended in quiet heartbreak weeks ago now stretched before her like a bridge between worlds, between the woman who once begged to belong and the woman now choosing her own terms. She rang the doorbell. Margaret answered. She looked smaller, paler. Her usual poise dimmed beneath layers of fatigue. For the first time, Olivia saw her not as the imposing matriarch, but as someone deeply human, fragile, flawed, mortal. "Olivia," Margaret breathed, clearly surprised. "I didn't expect." "I'm not here to fix anything," Olivia said softly. "I'm here because I heard you're unwell." Margaret stepped aside wordlessly, and Olivia entered. They sat in the living room, where sunlight filtered weakly through the curtains. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Margaret said, "I know you hate me." "I don't," Olivia replied. "But I don't trust you." "Not yet." Margaret nodded. "That's fair. You lied to me. You took something sacred, and you justified it like it was your right." Margaret closed her eyes, weariness etched into every line of her face. "I thought I was doing what was best for the family. But I forgot that you're family too." "I needed you to see me," Olivia whispered. "Not as someone to manage, but as your equal. As Nathan's wife. As a woman who deserved respect." Margaret opened her eyes. "I see it now. Far too late." "I'm not here to pick up where we left off," Olivia said. "I'm here because you need care. And because I'm not the kind of person who can walk away when someone's suffering, even if they've hurt me." Margaret looked at her, eyes brimming with something Olivia couldn't name. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this?" Olivia's voice trembled, but held. "Because you raised the man I loved. Because you were once kind to me. Because somewhere under the pride and the control, I believe you didn't mean to become someone I had to escape from." Margaret nodded slowly. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." "I always was," Olivia said gently. "You just didn't want to see it." Over the next few days, Olivia returned quietly, carefully. She brought meals, reminded Margaret to take her medication, scheduled follow-ups with the doctor. She didn't stay long. She didn't sleep there. But she showed up. Each time she left, Margaret would watch her from the doorway. Lips pressed tightly as though she wanted to say more, but didn't know how. One afternoon, as Olivia packed up her things, Margaret finally spoke. "The gold," she said softly. "I can't give it back. I spent most of it. But I've started selling some of my own jewelry. I want to repay you, even if it takes time." Olivia paused, then nodded. "Thank you." Margaret stood, walked to a cabinet, and opened a drawer. She pulled out a small blue velvet box, the original box from the wedding. She handed it to Olivia. "I kept one thing," Margaret said. "The lily pendant. I couldn't bear to sell it." Olivia opened the box. The pendant gleamed faintly in the afternoon light. "Then why are you giving it to me now?" she asked. Margaret's voice broke. because it never should have been mine to keep. Olivia said nothing. She simply closed the box and held it in her palm. Not as a gift. Not as forgiveness. But as the first honest exchange between two women who were finally, painfully, beginning to understand one another. End of Chapter 5, The Breaking Point. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 6, starting the next part of the story? Part 2, Shifting Ground? The days unfolded like cautiously turned pages in a fragile book. Olivia still didn't move back into the Bennett house, and she didn't wear her wedding ring. But she came. She helped. She made tea in the afternoon, prepared low-sodium meals Margaret would actually eat, and left before the sun dipped behind the horizon. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was presence. And in some strange, quiet way, it was enough. Margaret, for her part, had changed. Not in the loud, dramatic way Olivia might have once imagined, but in the small details. She no longer corrected Olivia's cooking methods, no longer offered suggestions veiled in condescension. She asked how Olivia slept, how work was going. She listened, really listened, when Olivia spoke. And sometimes, when they sat together on the porch while Robert read inside, they said nothing at all. But the silence was different now. Not sharp. Not heavy. Just quiet. One Thursday morning, Olivia stopped by with a basket of groceries and a borrowed book for Margaret. To her surprise, Margaret was already at the door, waiting. "I made tea," she said, a little breathless from standing too long. Olivia followed her inside. Margaret moved slowly these days, more out of caution than weakness. She poured 2 cups and sat at the kitchen table, where sunlight spilled across the wood, making everything look warmer than it felt. After a few sips, Margaret looked up. "Do you love him still?" Olivia didn't answer right away. Margaret continued, "Nathan." Olivia exhaled. "Yes, but I don't know if that's enough." Margaret nodded slowly. "It wasn't enough for me and Robert for a long time. We stayed together because it was expected. Because we didn't know how to let go of the habit of being together, even when we'd stopped being honest with each other." Olivia studied her carefully. "Are you saying I should leave?" "I'm saying," Margaret said gently, "that sometimes love isn't about staying. It's about knowing who you are without the person. And deciding if you still want to share the journey." Olivia looked down into her cup. The tea had gone cold. "Have you ever apologized to Robert?" she asked suddenly. Margaret's eyes flickered. "Not properly. I never knew how." "That's what scares me," Olivia said quietly. "I don't want to become someone who chooses pride over people." Margaret set down her cup. "Then don't. Be better than me. You already are." That afternoon, Olivia met Nathan again. This time, it was at her request. They sat on a bench by the bay, the water glinting in the sunlight. Nathan looked tired, but less broken. Like the silence between them had taught him something, too. "I've been in therapy," he said. "Once a week. It's helping." Olivia nodded. "Good. I realized I've been passive my whole life. Letting Mom make decisions. Letting things slide. I thought staying neutral kept the peace, but really, it just left the people I loved unprotected." Olivia didn't say anything. "I don't expect you to come back," he continued. "And I know I can't undo what happened. But I'm working on becoming someone who doesn't disappear when it's inconvenient." She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, saw not the boy she married, but a man trying, faltering, perhaps, but trying. "I've changed too," she said. "I had to. I don't need rescuing, Nathan. I don't need you to stand in front of me. I need someone who'll stand with me." "I want to be that," he said. "If you'll let me try." There was a long pause. Then Olivia reached into her bag and handed him the blue velvet box. He opened it and saw the lily pendant inside. "She kept it," Olivia said. "Even when she spent everything else." Nathan touched the necklace gently. "She loved it. Said it reminded her of her mother." "I think she's trying," Olivia added. "In her own way." Nathan looked at her. "So are we." Olivia took the box back and closed it carefully. "I'm not ready yet." "I know," Nathan said. "But I'll be here. However long it takes." She stood, and he stood with her. There was no dramatic kiss. No swelling music. Just two people, broken open, starting to rebuild, Not what they were, but what they might still become. Together, maybe. Or separately. Either way, this time, it would be by choice. Olivia stood at the threshold of her new apartment, a modest third-floor walk-up with creaky stairs, chipped paint on the hallway walls, and a tiny kitchen with barely enough room to turn around. But it was hers. She turned the key with a small, almost defiant sense of pride. As the door creaked open, a shaft of afternoon sunlight spilled in, illuminating the bare wooden floor and the unopened boxes scattered across the room. The scent of fresh paint still lingered faintly in the air, reminding her that this was a beginning. A clean slate. She dropped her bag and stood quietly in the middle of the empty living room. No voices calling her name. No expectations. No eyes watching her moves. Just stillness. Hers alone. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel lonely. Later that day, Emma arrived with pizza, 2 folding chairs, and a bottle of wine wrapped in a crumpled paper bag. Congratulations. She grinned, holding the wine up like a trophy. To the softest reset I've ever seen. They sat on the floor with their backs against the wall, eating straight from the box and toasting to freedom with mismatched mugs. You sure you don't want me to help with furniture? Emma asked. Not yet, Olivia smiled. I want to live with the space a little. Learn its moods. Emma raised an eyebrow. That sounds like something a woman says right before buying 47 throw pillows. Olivia laughed. No promises. They stayed until sunset painted the walls gold, and after Emma left, Olivia sat alone on the balcony, watching the street below. Life bustled on, cars, strollers, couples walking hand in hand, and she realized the world didn't stop because she left her marriage. And that was okay. It was strangely comforting, even. In the following weeks, Olivia found rhythm in solitude. Mornings were hers. She made coffee exactly the way she liked it, played quiet piano playlists while getting ready, and walked to work with a new kind of lightness in her steps. She'd stopped trying to predict other people's needs before her own. She no longer braced herself for comments she'd have to politely absorb. She was building a life that didn't orbit someone else. At work, she took on a new project, leading a campaign that blended sustainability with bold design. Her boss noticed. Her coworkers leaned on her. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was just managing life, she was designing it. One night, while sorting through a box she hadn't opened since the move, Olivia found her wedding album. She hesitated, then opened it. The pages fluttered between her fingers, snapshots of laughter, slow dances, tender kisses. And then there it was again, the photo of her alone, veil lifting gently in the wind. She stared at that image for a long time. She had loved him. That much was still true. But love alone wasn't enough, not when it came wrapped in silence and avoidance. She closed the album and placed it in the back of her closet, not to forget, but to rest. One Friday morning, her phone rang. It was Margaret. Olivia blinked in surprise. They hadn't spoken since the day Margaret gave back the pendant. She answered cautiously. Hello. Olivia, Margaret said, her voice softer than usual. I hope this isn't a bad time. No, I'm okay. Is everything all right? I'm calling because I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For coming back when I needed help. For not humiliating me. For treating me like a person when I hadn't always done the same for you. Olivia didn't know what to say. She sat down on her couch. I'm not asking you to forget everything, Margaret continued. And I don't expect you to forgive it all. But I needed to tell you that I see you now. I really do. And I was wrong. There was a pause, not of tension, but of release. Olivia's throat tightened. Thank you for saying that. Take care of yourself, Margaret said quietly. And if you ever want to come by, you're always welcome. I'll think about it. That weekend, Olivia received another message from Nathan. I saw your campaign. It's beautiful. You're doing amazing things. I'm proud of you. She read the message twice, then typed back. Thank you. I'm proud of me too. She didn't send anything more. She didn't have to. On Sunday morning, Olivia watered her new potted plants, lit a vanilla candle, and settled into a reading chair beside the window. The city moved quietly outside, and for the first time in a long time, her world felt still, but not empty. She had reclaimed her story. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with space, with grace, with boundaries, with truth. And somewhere between heartbreak and healing, she found herself again. Stronger, softer, wiser, and free. It began as a writing exercise. Olivia had read an article that morning titled, "Letters You Should Write But Never Send." It suggested that closure often didn't come from the other person, it came from clarity. From putting pain into words, even if no one else ever read them. She made tea, lit the lavender candle Emma had gifted her on move-in day, and pulled out her journal. The page sat blank for several minutes before her pen touched down. And then, the words flowed. Dear Nathan. It's strange writing this now, from a place where I no longer cry at the mention of your name. I've been thinking about the beginning lately, the first time we talked at that cafe downtown. The way your smile always started with your eyes, the late-night ramen runs. The love we shared wasn't fake. It wasn't even weak. But it wasn't brave. You see, love without courage is like a house built without a foundation. Pretty, yes. But when the storm came, everything cracked. And it did storm, didn't it? Quietly, and then all at once. I wish you'd spoken louder. I wish I had too. Maybe we both thought our silence would protect something tender. But all it did was suffocate it. I spent so long trying to be the peacekeeper. The bridge, the good wife. I ignored the parts of myself that screamed for air. I told myself that compromise was love, that silence was wisdom, that patience would fix everything. But love isn't meant to erase us. And peace built on erasure isn't peace, it's surrender. I don't regret loving you. I don't even regret leaving. They're both parts of the same truth. We weren't ready. Maybe we never were. But I'm learning now not just how to live without you, but how to live with me. The me who says no. The me who doesn't shrink to fit someone else's comfort. The me who deserves softness without sacrifice. And even though I won't send this letter, I want you to know. I hope you become someone who listens before it's too late. I hope you learn that love is less about grand gestures and more about quiet, everyday bravery. I hope one day, when you love again, you choose her fully with your voice, with your actions, with your presence. And I hope she never has to write a letter like this. Goodbye, Nathan. Olivia. She stared at the page, heart thrumming. The kind of release that didn't come with tears, but with breath. Deep, full, uncluttered breath. She didn't tear the page out. She didn't hide it. She simply closed the journal and placed it gently on her nightstand. Later that evening, she took a walk to the bookstore where she and Nathan had browsed together countless times. The owner still remembered her. Back to reclaim your spot in the self-help section, he joked. She smiled. Nope. Just fiction tonight. She ran her fingers along the shelves, stopping when a cover caught her eye, The Light We Carry. It felt appropriate. She bought the book, took herself out for coffee, and sat at a corner table watching couples laugh, strangers hug, and children play near the window. The world didn't need her to perform anymore. She didn't owe anyone a version of herself she no longer recognized. Later, as the sun began to dip behind the buildings, Olivia pulled out her phone and opened her camera. She snapped a photo of the golden sky and captioned it. This piece took work. And I'm proud of every brick I laid. She didn't tag anyone. She didn't need to. This chapter was hers. And for once, she didn't feel like she was starting over. She felt like she was finally home with herself. It had been nearly 2 months since Olivia moved out. 2 months since she stopped checking her phone first thing in the morning, bracing for silence or worse, regret. 2 months since she walked away from the idea of who she was supposed to be and started walking toward who she actually was. And then, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, there was a knock on her apartment door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Emma was out of town, and her family rarely dropped by unannounced. Cautious, Olivia peeked through the peephole. It was Robert. She opened the door slowly. Hi, she said, surprised. Is everything okay? Robert, always calm, always the quiet observer, gave her a small nod. He held a paper bag in one hand, slightly crumpled from the rain outside. "Just thought I'd bring you something," he said, holding out the bag. "Margaret made lemon cookies. Said they were your favorite." Olivia hesitated. The last time she'd had Margaret's lemon cookies, it was the night before she left. She took the bag gently. "Thank you." Robert didn't step in. He didn't ask to. He stood there, like a man who had no intention of pushing, only offering. "She's better," he said after a moment. "Health-wise. And other ways, too." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "She misses you," he said. Not out of guilt. Out of understanding. "She's different now." Olivia didn't know how to respond. She'd felt the shift in Margaret, yes. But the idea of returning, of being part of that house again, sent a quiet panic fluttering through her chest. "I'm not the same," Olivia said softly. "And I don't know if I can go back to that version of my life." Robert nodded slowly. "That's fair. I didn't come to change your mind. Just to tell you, you were never wrong to leave. And if one day you choose to visit, the door's open. No conditions. No expectations." She blinked, the kindness in his words washing over her like warm rain. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet. Robert smiled, a soft and rare thing. "We're proud of you, Olivia. I hope you know that." That night, Olivia sat with the cookies untouched beside her. She stared at the little crumpled bag and thought of all the things that used to weigh her down, the obligation to keep the peace, to prove herself, to never be the reason for tension. And now? Now she lived in a home where the only voice that needed permission was her own. Still, something tugged at her. Not a sense of duty. Not guilt. Something gentler. Curiosity. What if healing didn't always mean returning? What if it simply meant revisiting on your own terms? The next day, Olivia found herself in front of the Bennett house again. She didn't bring anything. No dramatic speech, no expectations. Just herself. She rang the bell. Margaret answered. This time, she didn't look surprised. Just quietly grateful. "I didn't expect you," she said. "I'm not here to stay," Olivia said gently. "But I wanted to see how you're doing. And I thought, maybe we could share some tea." Margaret nodded, stepping aside. "Of course." They sat in the kitchen. The same place where so much had once gone unsaid. This time, the silence between them felt like an invitation, not a trap. Margaret poured the tea. Her hands slightly shaky but steady enough. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I almost didn't," Olivia admitted. Margaret looked at her. "I wouldn't have blamed you." They talked not about the gold, or the wedding or Nathan. Just two women sharing tea, soft words, and something that tasted a lot like reconciliation. "I've been going to a support group," Margaret said after a pause. "It's for women my age who held on too tightly. Who never learned how to let go with grace." Olivia nodded slowly. "That's brave." "It's necessary," Margaret said. As the afternoon light waned, Olivia stood to leave. Margaret followed her to the door. "I hope you'll come again," she said. "I might," Olivia said. "But only if I want to. Not because I feel I have to." Margaret nodded. "That's all I hope for. That you always feel free." Walking back to her apartment, Olivia felt no weight in her chest. No knots in her stomach. No lingering pressure to fix what had once been broken. Not all broken things need fixing. Some simply need to be left behind. And some, just a few, are meant to be picked up gently, dusted off, and turned into something new. Not the old version. Not the ideal. But something honest. Something earned. Olivia smiled as she reached her building, a soft wind lifting her hair. A visit. A choice. Not a return. A reclaiming. The morning air was crisp when Olivia stepped onto her balcony, a cup of warm chai in hand. Below her, the city moved with quiet rhythm, delivery vans hummed past. The florist opened her shop on the corner, and a child rode a scooter down the sidewalk, laughter trailing behind like music. Olivia took a slow sip of her drink, letting the steam rise and blur the edges of her vision for a moment. There had been no calls from Nathan since the last message. No follow-ups. No pressure. And that silence, this time, felt like respect. She glanced over at her journal, sitting on the side table next to a blooming peace lily. Its pages were no longer filled with confusion or pain, but with clarity. With recipes, ideas, travel plans, and pieces of herself she had long put aside. She had made peace with the past, not because it asked her to, but because she chose to. Today marked 6 months since the wedding. 6 months since the day she stood under that floral arch, heart full of hope and vows whispered with trembling hands. And 6 months since everything began to unravel. Olivia picked up her phone and opened her calendar. She'd blocked off this day with a single note. Reflect. Reclaim. Reimagine. She smiled. Not mourn. Not regret. Not remember. She'd lived those verbs already. She was done with them. Today was for the future. Later that afternoon, Olivia visited her favorite bookstore, the one she used to frequent with Nathan, and the one she had returned to alone not long after their separation. But this time, journal in the other hand. Cobblestones clicked beneath her sandals, and the scent of roasted chestnuts drifted through the warm air. She had been in Portugal for 9 days now, long enough for her internal rhythm to shift. She woke when the sky was pink, wandered neighborhoods with no plan, tasted things she couldn't pronounce, and wrote every evening by candlelight in a room that overlooked the river Tagus. It was her first solo trip, but not once had she felt alone. Each day felt like a letter addressed to herself, sent not in words, but in steps taken, languages stumbled through, fears met with open palms. That evening, Olivia returned to her rented flat in Alfama. The walls were whitewashed, the furniture simple, but a small vase of sunflowers sat on the table, left by the elderly woman who owned the apartment. Maria. Maria didn't speak English. Olivia didn't speak Portuguese. And yet, every day, they shared fruit, tea, and laughter through gestures and smiles. Olivia took a seat by the window, the city humming softly below her, and opened her journal. She began writing. Today I got lost on purpose. I followed a street musician's song until I ended up in a courtyard filled with orange trees. I ate codfish on the steps of an old cathedral and danced barefoot at sunset with strangers. I didn't check my phone once, not because I forgot, but because I didn't need to. She paused, then added, "This is what it feels like to be my own compass." The next morning, Maria tapped on Olivia's door with a letter in hand. The international stamp caught Olivia's eye immediately. Her name, neatly written. It was from Nathan. She hadn't heard from him since the note. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. Dear Olivia, you don't need to read this. Maybe you won't. But I wanted to write it anyway. I've been thinking a lot about what love really is, not the movie version, not the vows, but the messy, human kind. And I realized something. I didn't lose you when you walked out. I lost you long before that, when I stood beside you in silence, when I let someone else speak over your voice, when I forgot that loving you meant defending you, not just admiring you. You were never asking for perfection. You were asking to be seen, to be heard, to be held in the light, not hidden in someone else's shadow. And I failed you in that. But Olivia, I'm grateful. Because leaving me might have been the bravest thing you ever did, not just for yourself, but for me too. You woke me up. I'm working now. On myself. And no, not to win you back. I'm doing it because I want to deserve the kind of love I once had and didn't know how to keep. You showed me what it looks like. Wherever you are, I hope you're writing your name in the sky. And if our paths ever cross again, I hope it's not as broken people looking backward, but as whole people moving forward. With care, always. Nathan. Olivia read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and slipped it into her journal between pages filled with sunlight and selfhood. She didn't cry. She didn't ache. She felt still. Not because Nathan had changed, but because she had. He was no longer the question. She was no longer the answer. They were simply 2 chapters in each other's story. And this was a new book entirely. She looked out the window as the bells of Lisbon began to chime. The day was waiting. And so was she. Alive. Awake. And full of light. The Lisbon sky was soft with early morning mist as Olivia boarded the regional train bound for Sintra. She wore a linen dress and carried a small backpack with nothing more than water, her journal, and a guidebook she rarely opened. She had heard that Sintra was a dreamer's city, forests thick with fog, palaces that looked like spilled stories, and gardens that whispered. It felt right for where she was now, between chapters, quietly blooming. The train rattled gently through the countryside. Olivia watched houses blur into fields, and fields blur into cliffs. She pressed her forehead to the cool window and let her thoughts wander, not looking for answers, just resting in the journey. It wasn't until the train slowed at the Ratio junction that she noticed the woman across from her. Elderly, with thick silver curls pinned in place, wearing a blue shawl and holding an envelope in her lap like it was precious. They locked eyes briefly, and Olivia smiled politely. The woman nodded once and spoke in thick-accented English. "You are American?" "Yes," Olivia said. "You travel alone?" "I do." The woman smiled. "Brave. Or broken?" Olivia blinked. "Maybe a bit of both." The woman leaned closer, her voice softer now. "Everyone leaves with something. The smart ones return with less. Less noise," she said, tapping her chest. "Less lies told to themselves." Olivia chuckled quietly. "I think I am one of the smart ones then." The woman sat back, satisfied. "I came here 40 years ago after losing someone. I never left." "Why?" "Because I stopped searching for where I belonged and found I already was home." The train shuddered to a stop at Sintra. People shuffled around them. Olivia stood and reached for her bag. The woman didn't move. "You won't find your next chapter in castles or books," she said. "You'll find it when you stop asking if you're allowed to live it." Olivia met her gaze. No judgment. No expectation. Just truth. "Thank you," Olivia said. The woman nodded. "Write it well, child." Sintra was every bit as magical as Olivia had imagined. She wandered the winding forest trails to Quinta de Regalera, its moss-covered walls like pages from a forgotten poem. At the initiation well, she descended the spiral staircase in silence, placing one hand on the damp stone as if grounding herself in something ancient. At the bottom, she sat for a while. She thought about her past, not with sadness, but with reverence. Every misstep, every silence, every ache, they had all brought her here. She opened her journal and wrote, "Today I stopped asking if I'm healing. I simply existed. And it was enough." When she climbed back into the light, she felt different, not reborn, but somehow recentered. Like the woman who once waited for permission to speak had finally started to sing. Later, Olivia returned to the train station and scanned the crowd. The woman in the blue shawl was gone. In her place, on the empty bench, was a pressed wildflower, yellow, delicate, left neatly on the seat where she had been. No name, no note, just a quiet gift. Olivia picked it up gently and tucked it into her journal beside Nathan's letter. She didn't know what would come next. But she no longer needed a map. Only her instincts. And they were louder now than they had ever been. Olivia's journey continued south to the rolling hills of the Alentejo region, where ancient olive groves stretched as far as the eye could see. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden hues over the gnarled branches and whispering leaves. She had rented a small cottage nestled between rows of silver-green trees. The air smelled earthy and fresh, a balm for her restless spirit. Each morning she awoke to birdsong and the faint sound of farmers tending to their land. Here, she felt the slow pulse of time, steady, unhurried, patient. The locals spoke in lilting Portuguese, their faces weathered but kind. Olivia had learned a few phrases, enough to exchange smiles and pleasantries, but mostly she communicated through gestures and shared laughter. One afternoon, as she wandered through the grove, she met an elderly man named Joaquim. His hands were strong and calloused, his eyes bright with wisdom. "Welcome," he said in accented English, pointing to the olives. "These trees, they speak a language few understand." Olivia smiled. "What do they say?" He chuckled softly. "They tell stories of resilience, of standing firm through storms and droughts." Of growth that comes slowly but surely. Olivia nodded thoughtfully. Sounds like something I need to learn. Joachim gestured for her to sit on a nearby stone bench. They sat together in silence, the sun warming their backs. The olive tree's secret, he said after a pause, is patience. Its roots run deep. It bends with the wind, but does not break. It gives fruit year after year, even when the seasons are harsh. Olivia took a deep breath, feeling the truth of his words settle in her heart. I'm learning, she whispered, to be patient with myself. Joachim smiled. That is the greatest lesson of all. That evening, Olivia sat outside her cottage under a blanket of stars. She opened her journal and began to write. In the language of olive trees, I hear my own story, one of endurance, quiet strength, and slow, beautiful growth. I am not a storm to fear or a flood to resist. I am a tree, rooted and reaching, learning to thrive in my own time. As the night deepened, she felt a peace unlike any she had known before, a gentle assurance that life, like the olive tree, would unfold in its own perfect rhythm. She closed her journal and looked up at the vast sky. The light that had once flickered dimly within her now burned steady and bright. And she was ready for whatever came next. One morning, as golden light filtered through the olive trees, Olivia found a small envelope resting on the doorstep of the cottage. The handwriting was unmistakable, careful, familiar. She picked it up, heart fluttering. The letter was from Emma. Inside, Emma wrote about her recent adventures, the ups and downs of her own journey towards self-discovery, and the quiet ways she missed Olivia's laughter. But near the end, there was a sentence that caught Olivia's breath. Mom asked about you. She wants to know if you're coming home soon. Olivia sat back against the cool stone wall, letting the words wash over her. Home. The word carried so many meanings, sometimes comfort, sometimes chains. She thought about the Bennett house, the rooms filled with unspoken words. The gold that had once symbolized trust and had become a burden. She thought about Margaret, fragile now, seeking something she had long denied. And she thought about herself, no longer the girl who had left, but a woman shaped by fire and light, ready to decide what home truly meant. She opened her journal and wrote, Home is not a place I return to. It's a place I build with love, with courage, with honesty. The journey had taught her that some wounds heal slowly, and some bridges take time to rebuild. But healing began with choice, with reaching out, with saying yes to herself and maybe, one day, to others. Olivia folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her bag. She was not ready to go back yet, but she was ready to carry home within her wherever she wandered. And that was enough. The airport buzzed softly around Olivia as she wheeled her suitcase toward the terminal. Her heart was steady, her steps deliberate. She was returning, not to the person she had been, but to the life she had chosen. San Diego greeted her with familiar warmth, the golden light settling over the city like a promise. Her phone buzzed, another message from Nathan. This time simply, Welcome home. Olivia smiled, but didn't respond right away. She wasn't the same woman who had left months before. Her first stop wasn't the Bennett house. It was her own apartment, small, lived in. A sanctuary filled with plants, books, and the quiet hum of possibility. She unlocked the door, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. For the first time in a long time, home felt like hers. Later that evening, Olivia found herself sitting across from Margaret in a small, sunlit cafe. The air was soft with the scent of coffee and blooming jasmine. Margaret reached across the table, taking Olivia's hand gently. I'm proud of you, she said, eyes glistening. Olivia squeezed her hand back. Thank you. For seeing me. Margaret nodded. And for forgiving me. Olivia smiled softly. We're still learning. They sat together in companionable silence, two women bound by history, healing, and hope. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars come to rest on earth. Inside, Olivia's heart shone with a new light, steady, radiant, and free. Olivia's heart pounded in rhythm with the sharp click of her heels against the polished floor of the downtown office building. The sleek glass doors gleamed with morning light as she stepped inside, clutching her portfolio tightly. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the interview that could finally launch her career into new, uncharted territory. Her breath hitched briefly. Doubt, old, familiar, tried to creep in. Am I ready? She wondered. Can I prove that I'm more than the mistakes and scars of my past? But then she remembered Emma's voice from the night before, steady and encouraging. You've got this. They're looking for someone exactly like you. The elevator ride up was brief, but felt like forever. The sterile hum of the machinery mingled with the swirl of nerves and excitement inside her chest. When the doors slid open onto the 15th floor, Olivia squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked into the interview room. Inside, 3 faces greeted her, 2 women and a man. All smiling warmly, but professionally. The lead interviewer, a poised woman named Karen, gestured toward the seat opposite her. Olivia, it's a pleasure to meet you, Karen began. We've reviewed your portfolio and your blog. Your campaign ideas are fresh and engaging. Tell us, what draws you to our company? Olivia smiled, the words flowing more easily than she expected. I admire how your company balances innovation with social responsibility. I want to be part of a team that creates meaningful impact, not just profit. Karen nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly the kind of vision we value here. The interviewers proceeded with questions, some expected, others challenging. Olivia answered with honesty and confidence, sharing her past experiences, but framing them as lessons rather than burdens. When the session ended, Karen stood and shook Olivia's hand firmly. Thank you for your time. We'll be in touch soon. Walking out of the building, Olivia felt a lightness she hadn't known in years. The weight of judgment and self-doubt lifted just a little. That evening, she called Emma to share the good news. I think it went well, Olivia said, smiling into the phone. And even if it doesn't, I'm proud I got through it. Emma's laughter was a bomb. That's my girl. No matter what happens. You're already winning. As Olivia prepared for bed that night, she felt a spark of something new, hope. Not the fragile kind that wavered with every breath, but a steady ember ready to grow into a flame. Tomorrow was a new day, a fresh start, and she was ready to meet it head-on. Olivia's first day at the new company buzzed with the promise of possibility. The open-plan office, bright and modern, smelled faintly of coffee and ambition. She found her desk near the window, where sunlight streamed onto her laptop and notes. Around her, people worked and chatted with an easy camaraderie she hadn't felt in a long time. Her manager, a warm woman named Julia, introduced her to the team. Among them was Mark, a tall, easygoing man with a quick smile and an approachable demeanor. His eyes held a genuine kindness that put Olivia at ease from the start. During lunch, Mark invited her to join a group heading to a nearby cafe. The conversation was light but meaningful, covering favorite books, travel stories, and dreams beyond work. As the days passed, Olivia and Mark found themselves pairing up on projects, their collaboration effortless. He listened closely, valued her ideas, and offered support without judgment. Slowly, Olivia felt walls she hadn't realized she'd built begin to soften. One afternoon, while reviewing campaign ideas in a cozy corner of the office, Mark looked up and asked, "What brought you here?" "Olivia?" "Beyond the job." She paused, considering how much to share. "Honestly, I needed a fresh start. A chance to redefine who I am." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "I get that. Sometimes the hardest journeys lead us to the best places." Their eyes met, and Olivia felt a spark, a fragile but thrilling connection. That evening, as she walked home, Olivia realized she was no longer just surviving, she was beginning to thrive. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a wounded past, but as a person capable of growth and joy. She smiled softly to herself, welcoming this new chapter with open arms. Olivia had quickly settled into the rhythm of her new life. Her days at the office were filled with creativity and collaboration, and her evenings offered space for reflection and growth. Yet, She understood that true healing was a journey, not a destination, and she was committed to tending the threads of her well-being with care. She started attending a local yoga class nestled in a quiet studio downtown. The instructor, a gentle woman named Mia, encouraged mindfulness and compassion, guiding the class to listen deeply to their bodies and hearts. Olivia found herself breathing more fully, feeling tension unwind with each pose, and appreciating the sanctuary the practice offered from the world's demands. At work, her blog had begun to draw a small but growing audience. Her honest reflections on vulnerability, resilience, and self-love resonated with readers far beyond her expectations. Messages poured in, thank yous from strangers who found strength in her words, and shared stories that knit a new community around her experiences. One weekend, Emma organized a small gathering at her apartment. Olivia hesitated at first, but decided to attend. Surrounded by friends new and old, laughter flowed easily, and warmth filled the rooms. For the first time in ages, Olivia felt a sense of belonging not rooted in obligation, but in genuine connection. Margaret and Nathan remained in her thoughts, though she had maintained a careful distance. Olivia sent occasional messages to Margaret, offering support without expectation. And Nathan had slowly become more present, not as a lover, but as part of her complex past she was learning to integrate. As Olivia sat at her desk late one evening, fingers dancing over the keyboard, she realized the threads of her life, once tangled in pain and silence, were weaving into a tapestry richer than she had dared imagine. She closed her laptop, a soft smile lighting her face. She was healing. And in that healing, she was becoming whole. The invitation arrived on a crisp Friday afternoon, a glossy envelope embossed with the company's logo. Inside was an invitation to an industry conference in Los Angeles, promising networking opportunities, inspiring speakers, and a chance to showcase Olivia's latest campaign. It was a big step, one that both excited and unsettled her. Mark called that evening, voice warm and encouraging. I'm going to the conference too. Maybe we can go together. Olivia hesitated, but then smiled. I'd like that. The days leading up to the trip were a whirlwind of preparation, finalizing presentations, coordinating travel plans, and battling the familiar flutter of nerves that accompanied any leap into the unknown. When they arrived in Los Angeles, the city buzzed with energy. Amid towering skyscrapers and palm-lined streets, Olivia felt both small and significant, a single thread in a vast tapestry of dreams and ambitions. The conference was intense but invigorating. Panels on creativity, leadership, and innovation sparked ideas and fueled her passion. Mark was a steady presence, attentive, supportive, and genuine. One evening, after a long day of sessions, they walked along the beach, the Pacific waves whispering secrets beneath a velvet sky. Mark stopped, turning to face her. Olivia, he said quietly, I know you've been through a lot, but I want you to know I'm here. Not to fix anything, just to be with you. Her breath caught. For a moment, the weight of the past and the promise of the future hung in balance. She smiled softly, the first time without hesitation. Thank you. That means more than you know. The horizon glowed faintly as they stood together, two souls navigating new terrain, not perfect, not without fear, but willing to walk forward hand in hand. And in that willingness, Olivia found a turning point, a choice to embrace love and life anew, on her own terms. The sun rose over San Diego, casting warm golden light through the windows of Olivia's apartment. She sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of steaming coffee in hand, feeling a quiet sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. After returning from Los Angeles, Olivia's life felt fuller, richer, not because everything was perfect, but because she had begun to embrace imperfection as part of her journey. At work, her campaign had been a success, earning praise not only from clients, but from colleagues who admired her resilience and creativity. She found joy in mentoring a new intern, sharing lessons from her own experiences and encouraging growth. Mark had become a steady presence, Not rushing, not demanding, but offering companionship rooted in respect and understanding. Their connection blossomed slowly, each step taken with intention and care. One evening, as they walked hand in hand along the beach, the waves lapping gently at their feet, Olivia felt the weight of her past lighten, replaced by a bright hope for the future. "I'm ready," she said softly. Mark smiled. "For what?" "For whatever comes next. Together or apart. With love, courage, and honesty." He squeezed her hand gently. "That's all any of us can ask for." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Olivia knew she was no longer defined by the shadows of her past. She was the author of her own story, free, strong, and radiant. And this was just the beginning.